night, I mean, he goes to the mikvah, he has to, the sun goes down or comes dark at night, then he becomes tahar, then he's pure. But if he has a discharge 2 days in a row, this unusual discharge, or he has this discharge over 2 days, one discharge, but on 2 different days, he would also become contaminated. He would also be contaminated, but because it was two discharges over 2 days, or if we had two different discharges in the same day, he would be contaminated for 7 days. He would have to wait to have 7 clean days. And then only after 7 clean days would he become purified by going to the mikveh. Good morning, Ronnie.
Good morning, Rabbi.
I'm having difficulty plugging the plug in, so I hope. I mean, it says that we have full battery, but I hope the computer stays on good. So then the Gemara said, the last thing the Gemara said was, if he goes ahead and he has this discharge during Bein Hashmashot. During Bein Hashmashot, it's twilight. Let's say after sunset, between sunset and evening, and between sunset and when the stars come out. So that time period is very unknown. What is that? Is that day? Is that night? That time period, or is there partial day and partial night? So the Gemara says that if he had, the last thing we're up to in the Gemara, the bottom of 34b2, if he was Roy Yom Echad Ben Hashmashot, there's a quote from the Mishnah that if he saw one day, meaning there was one seeing, one sighting, one emission, but that emission was during Ben Hashmashot, which was during this twilight zone. So it could have been that some of the emission was during daytime, and then some of that same emission was during nighttime. And therefore, that would make him a safek. He is a safek, he is a possible contamination for 7 days. Because we said if there's two emissions or one emission over 2 different days, that will make him contaminated for 7 days. So therefore, the Gemara says that will be a safek. That will be like a safek right there. That will be a safek l'tumah. He is a safek regarding contamination. That was the last thing that we said. That's what we're up to on Friday. But today we'll start with the Hagufa Kasha on 34b3. I mean, we began already, but we're inside the Gemara. Okay, so inside the Gemara, that was the last statement on 34b2 is the Ra Yom Echad Ben Hashmashot. If he saw one day during twilight, Safek L'Tumah. He is a Safek. He's in doubt regarding contamination of maybe he's contaminated for 7 days, or maybe he's only contaminated for 1 day. Meaning to say, if it was all that emission was all in 1 day at the same time, whatever that time is, it could have been all day, or could have been all night. I mean, that twilight could be all day, could be considered all night, or it could be partial day and partial night. So therefore, he's a safek. Maybe he's contaminated for 1 day, or he's a safek. He's possibly contaminated for 7 days. Okay, Hagufa Kasha. Now the Gemara is going back on 34b3, top of the page. It's going back to what we said. We made a statement earlier when the Gemara was trying to define Bein Hashmashot. We wanted to know what is this time period. When is this considered twilight? So you, Amrit, you said Ezeu Bein Hashmashot. You told me, you said, when is Bein Hashmashot? When is twilight? When is this time of doubt? Like we know on Shabbat, we're strict on both ends, right? On Shabbat, we go ahead, but once it's twilight, Friday night, Friday after sunset, we consider it like night. Therefore, we can't go ahead and do any work. Can't light candles after sunset. You can't do anything. It's Shabbat. I mean, we consider it like Shabbat. But also Saturday night after sunset, we don't consider it like night. We consider it like sorry about that. Jaime was sorry about that. We were able to open up the thing to get the plug in. Thank you so much. And also, Ronnie, sorry about that. Okay, so we were identifying the time of Ben Hashmashot, of this twilight zone, like we were saying on Shabbat. So if we take the stringencies on both ends, so we consider twilight nighttime, Friday night, we don't do work. And Saturday night, we consider twilight daytime. We also don't do work. We consider it Shabbat. So now the Gemara says, Hagufa Kasha. Good morning, Simon. We are on 34b3 to the top. Hagufa Kasha. Amrit, you said, Ezehu Ben Hashmashot. You said, when is Ben Hashmashot? When is this twilight time? Mishatishka Hachama. From the time the sun sets. Kol Zman Shepnei Mizrach. Ma'adimim, as long as the eastern face of the sky, if the eastern face of the sky is still red and reddening, you told me that's considered Bein Hashmashot, right? You told me that if the eastern face of the sky, the sun sets in the west, and in the east it's still red, right? The clouds on the eastern horizon appear red from the glint of the sun rays. So you told me that is the time of Ben Hashmashot, of twilight, and Hahichsef HaTachton, which implies when the bottom, you're telling me when in the east, it's red. But if it want to be Hichsef HaTachton, but when the horizon in the east, if it's dark, if the bottom part of the sky has darkened, Hichsef HaElyon, but the top is not dark, it would sound like the implication is that would be Lailahu, that would be night, because you're telling me that as long as by the eastern face of the sky it's red, which indicates that it's not black on the horizon. But if it was black on the horizon, even if the sky would not be black, it would imply it's night. But then and then you learn Hichsif HaTachton, Hichsif HaElyon. You said that if the bottom of the horizon, by the horizon that the bottom is dark, but if the top, good morning, but if the top is not dark, we said that's Ben Hashmashot. We said that is still twilight. So we have an inference going one way and an open statement going the other way. Because the inference indicates that if it's black over the horizon, it's black on the lower end of the sky in the east, but it's not black on top, it would be night. And then you said that wouldn't be night. So that's the Gemara's questions. The Gemara says, you have Amar Rabba, Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabba says in the name of Yehuda and Shmuel, you have to read. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
We're discussing, we're identifying what's called night and what's called Ben Hashmashot, what's called twilight. So the Gemara says, Krucht v'tani. You have to combine the two parts of the Braita. You have to read it, you have to combine it together. And how do you combine it together? So you say like this, Ezehu Ben Hashmashot. When is it Ben Hashmashot? We welcome Yariv. Oh, look who's here. Shalom Aleichem. It's been a long
Shalom.
Yosef HaTzadik. And he was waiting to Parshas past week's Parsha, that Yosef was born in the Parsha, and now Yosef is back.
Yeah. I'm actually in middle of Miluim.
Where are you, in Israel or in America?
No, I'm in Israel, in the army.
Israel in the army, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yosef, great to see you.
Likewise, look. You see?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we are in the base.
You're on the base, okay. The Torah from Safra Synagogue, it's headed to the base in Eretz Yisrael. How do you like that?
Yeah, always.
Okay. Okay, you're
Good to
safe.
see you. I won't
Great to see
interrupt
you.
you anymore. Thank
Okay,
you.
great to see you, Yosef. I think about you, Yosef. Great to see you. Okay.
Likewise.
Okay, so the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Kroch v'tani. You have to read it, well, again, 34b, 3, middle paragraph, first side. Kroch v'tani. Ezeu ben hashmashot. What's called ben hashmashot? What's called twilight? When is this window of twilight that it's not clear if it's day or night, and you have to be strict, right? Mishetishka hachama, when the sun goes down, when it's still red because of the rays of the sun, it's still red in the east, and the hirsef hatachton, and if it becomes dark, but then if it's dark on the bottom of by the horizon, but but the top, but above, higher up, it's still not dark. That's also Nami Ben Hashmashot. That also has a status of Ben Hashmashot. It has a status of twilight. It's still not considered dark, meaning Shabbat is not over. And when it comes to Kriya Shema, good morning, Asaf. Kriya Shema needs to be said at night, right? So you have to. It's a safek if you fill in the midst of Kriya Shema at that time, and it's also been hashmashot, but hechsef ha'elyon, hishvu tachton, when the upper sky has darkened and has the same color as the bottom sky, so then that is considered night, and twilight is over. Okay, that's the first opinion. Comes Rabbi Yosef Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, 34b3, bottom of the first column. If Yosef Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel says hachitani, this is how you have to read the Braita. Mishetishka chama, once the sun has set, once in the east, again, the sun is setting in the west, and in the east, if it's still red, so that is yom. That is daytime. So this opinion saying, not like we had earlier. We had earlier to say that the other opinion is that once the sun has set, even though it's red in the east, it's red. That's ben hashmashot, right? Because that the first opinion said when the sun goes down, you're already now in the twilight zone. But this opinion is saying that when the sun has gone down, it's not called twilight unless the bottom of the sky has also darkened. So that's what this opinion says. But hirsef ha'tachton, welcome back, Asaf. Hirsef ha'tachton v'lo hirsef ha'elyon. If the bottom of the sky became dark and the top of the sky is top of the column, right column, and the top of the sky did not become dark, ben hashmashot, that's called ben hashmashot, morning sunny, that's called twilight zone. And hirsef ha'elyon v'shvil ha'tachton, laila. But if both the top of the sky and the bottom of the sky is dark, that is called night. So the Gemara says, "V'azdu l'taimayu," and these rabbis go according to their reasonings. That means that Rabbah holds that the time of Ben Hashmashot is a longer time, and Rav Yosef holds it's a shorter time. Right? Because Rav Yosef says that even when the sun goes down, as long as it's red in the east, the way the Gemara is reading now, that's called daytime. So if you call that daytime, so then you're saying the window, the opening bell for twilight only starts later, when it's dark on the bottom and not dark on top. But that was Rabbi Yosef. But Rabbah said no. When the sun goes down, that's already twilight. Even though it's red in the sky, red in the horizon, he doesn't call that day. He calls that twilight. So the Gemara says this argument Each one is going according to their line of reasoning, because we're going to see that one holds that twilight is a longer period of time. They went on record. Where did they go on record? So the Gemara says we found the itmar. They found shir ben hashmashot bekama. What is the length, the duration of ben hashmashot? So Amar Rabba, Shmuel, we are on 34b3 on the right side of the page, the right column. For Ozdula Taimahu, third paragraph from the top. They go according to their reasonings. Itma Shir Ben Hashmashot Bekama. How long is the time of Ben Hashmashot? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav Amar Shmuel, Shalosha Chelkei Mil. He says it is 3 Chelkei Mil. Now, what is a mil? Mil sounds like a mile, right? The word mil, I wonder if they took the word mil, connected from the word mile from the word mil. But but it's not the same size. A mile is like 5,000 something feet, right? But a mil is 2,000 amot, which 2,000 amot is anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 feet. So that is a mil, which many say that the length of a mil is about 18 minutes. Many say it's about, when we talk about a mil, we're talking about an 18-minute, there's a discussion, a mil anywhere between 18 and 24 minutes, I think is how different opinions. But many say that a mil is like about 18 minutes. You know, there's a halacha about how much you have to go out of your way, you know, to daven with a minyan, right? How far do you have to travel to go out of way? Now, really, so it says about going out of your way a mil. Go out of your way, I mean, what the law will require of you to go out of your way to daven with a minyan is a mil, 18 minutes. Now, even if the law does not require you, I still recommend to go out of your way more than 18 minutes, because at the end of the day, you miss out if you don't have a minyan. But what's the requirement? How much you're supposed to, Rabbi, I'm a certain distance from minyan, how much do I have to go out of my way? How much do I have to? So that seems to be a mil. That seems to be a 18-minute. Now, so the Gemara says the following. It says, one opinion says that how much is the duration of Ben Hashmashot, this twilight zone? So we're going to see, I mean, we look at the, we look at, from the time it's dark, the sun goes down until it gets dark, right? Which it's much longer than we'll see how much this 3/4 of a mil. Let's see. What is the amount of time of twilight? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav Shmuel, Shlosha Chelkei Mil. 3/4 of a mil. 3 parts of a mil. And what does it mean? So once I identify this word, 3 parts of a mil, what does the statement mean? My Shlosha Chelkei Mil. What is this? How do you translate 3 parts of a mil? Ilema, do you mean to say, a part is like a half, right? Sometimes when you depends how you talk. When you say 3 parts of a mil, if you mean a part is like a half, so do you mean 3 halves? Do you mean, which would mean 1.5 mil? Is that what you mean? Ilema plus a palgimila. Do you mean, good to see you, Morris? Do you mean that is it 3 parts of a mil, meaning three halves of a mil, which would be 3 times a half is 1.5. So then you should have said mil mersa. If that's what you mean, if you mean a 1.5 mil, you won't refer to it as 3 parts, which would be 3 halves, right? Instead of saying 3 half of dollars, you say $1.50. What? Or three, or three. Okay, a third. Or does it mean 3/4? That's the other way to look at it, right? So we'll see how to. If I say 3 parts, if I would say 1 part, that would be a third, I would think. If I say 3 parts, that might be three quarters. So we'll see. We'll see. The Gemara is going to Simon. The Gemara is going to give different possibilities. I don't know if you would say $1.50, $1.50. You would say maybe you would say $0.3. It's $1.50, $1.50. How much does it cost? $0.3. You would say $1.50. So that's what the Gemara says. So you wouldn't say it doesn't mean $1.50. The name of mila masa ella klosa telsi mila. Does it mean 3 parts, meaning 3/3? That means a third. The mill. Though you mean to be 3 parts of the mill, so then you would have said mill. If you mean 3/3, you wouldn't say 3 parts. You wouldn't say 3/3, which equals. You would just say more simply. We try to talk more simply, right? The rabbis are supposed to talk. When you say a statement, you should say it in something which means the more, if you could say something more simply, you would say it more simply. You wouldn't refer to. You wouldn't. No. So I think Simon. I think the Torah sometimes writes something a certain way because the Torah wants to teach you many lessons. So the Torah writes a pasuk a certain way. Let's say the Torah says eye for an eye, and it doesn't mean eye for an eye. It's a value of an eye for an eye, right? Someone knocks out someone's eye. It says ayin tachat ayin, eye for an eye. It doesn't mean eye for an eye. Is that the Masorah, the oral law, which said that it doesn't mean eye for an eye. Does not mean if you knock out someone's eye, you knock out the person's eye. Rather means if you knock out someone's eye, you have to pay the value of an eye. So why did the Torah say eye for an eye? The Torah could have spoken more clearly. So when the Torah doesn't speak clearly, because the Torah is coming to tell us a message, a lesson, a musar, right? So let's say I heard from David Feinstein of a blessed memory. He said, right, yeah, okay, but he said the following: if the Torah would just say eye for an eye, I think it's what he said. If the Torah would say eye for an eye, you would say, okay, you knocked out someone's eye, put it on the credit card. I'll pay for it on the credit card. But if you say eye for the value, but if I tell you, if I would say just eye, if I say the value of an eye for an eye, you will look at it like, okay, like any monetary issue. I owe the guy money, so okay, I knocked out his eye. So someone who's a wealthy person, okay, it'll cost him some money for the deal, right? But okay, it's a big expense he has to pay. But if the Torah says eye for an eye, if you knock out somebody's eye, your eye needs to be supposed to be knocked out. Of course, it's not. The Torah doesn't want it. You're not allowed to. But it gives you the feeling that you deserve it of your eye. If someone would be deserving of his eye being knocked out, knocking out someone's eye, so then he's going to be more careful when he's working in the fields, and maybe something's going to go flying and knock out someone's eye, because he would realize that he would be deserving of having his eye knocked out, even though that's not the law. But he would look at it in that fashion. Ezra, you hear the beautiful idea? So therefore, Simon, that's when the Torah talks in a way which is not clear, and therefore you need Rashi, or you need to explain what is the meaning of the pasuk. Because the Torah has many, many lessons, Sonny. It's many lessons. That's why it's endless. The message of the 34b3. However, when a rabbi is identifying something, the rabbi's job is to talk more clearly. Now, you do find, Simon, in the Mishnah, that the Mishnah sometimes talks very short. Because the Mishnah the rabbi taught the laws in a very short way. Remember, everything was by heart, right? And the problem is when you don't elaborate on something, then what's understandable to you, the later generation doesn't understand what you meant. So therefore, we have all these issues in the Gemara, Simon. Like, what is the meaning of the Mishnah? What does the Mishnah mean? Does it mean this? Does it mean that? Because when you don't elaborate, therefore, by the way, in business, it's a very good, my strong recommendation in business is you always do elaborate. When you do a contract, the best contract is a contract that, if you're a landlord, the best contract would be you write everything out. But when you don't write everything out, whether it's a contract, whether it's a landlord, whether it's a tenant, whatever you want to, whoever position you're in, employee, employer, you have all different questions. You know why we have so many questions? Who's right through this? Because you didn't clarify. You didn't write. Who's responsible for this? Is it the landlord, the tenant, the employee, employer? Right? You have questions at work. You know why? But if you would have, if someone would have written it out and spelled it out much more, clarified it to begin with, then there's no question, right? So we have a lawyer in the house over here, right? That's where there's all these questions. And they got to go to the judge. The Jews are supposed to go to a bezdin, a court, but because it's ambiguous is the right word.
Yeah.
When things are ambiguous, it leaves off for all different issues.
But sometimes it's ambiguous because people don't want to negotiate over that point. So maybe that was going on.
He intentionally left it there.
Yeah. Worded, we know it was like a committee. And so maybe some of the ambiguity is they maybe knew it might be ambiguous, but they couldn't reach a resolution on the specificity. So they're kind of punting it to later generations. It's like you're punting it to the judge.
Yeah, could be they didn't want to. They weren't discussing for whatever reason. They didn't feel necessary to discuss that issue, or they didn't feel it. Okay, so the Gemara says because I think they would have had answers to the question. Not everything. You know what? Not everything made it into the Mishnah. You know, like it's not everything makes it into the contract, right? And that's what happens. Something that's obvious to an earlier generation, or what you thought was obvious, in the later generation, it's not so obvious, right? I thought it was included in the deal. Whatever, no, you didn't say it. I don't know that it's included in the deal. So now the Gemara says, so if so the Gemara says, if it means tlosa tilsi, if it means 3/3 of a mil, 3 parts of a mil, meaning 3/3, which would mean 1/3, which would mean one name a mil, which is a mil. Just say a mil, meaning the Amora, the later rabbi, it should be more clear in his speech. So if he says the words, the rabbi says shlosha chelkei mil, 3 parts of a mil. So the more simplest way to translate it is 3/4 of a mil, 3 parts of a whole. Of a mil, 3/4, 75%. El tlosa rivi mila, 3/4 of a mil. Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda Mashmuel, what does he say? What is this duration of Ben Hashmashot? He says it's shnei chelkei mil. He says it's 2 parts of a mil. And the Gemara again is going to say it means 2/3. That's what the Gemara is going to conclude. I'll just give you a little heads up with it. But the Gemara is questioning also what is this? What does it mean 2 parts of a mil? Does it mean, a mil? This part meaning a half. Does it mean 2 halves? 2 halves would equal a whole. So you wouldn't call it 2 parts of a mil. You'd call it a mil. If when you say 2 parts of a mil, if you mean 2 halves of a mil, so then you would say, you wouldn't say 2 half of dollars. I say 2 halves, 2 halves of a dollar, right? You would say ilema tre palgi mila if it means 2 halves of a mil. So lema mil. Let him be more clear and say a mil. Ela tre revi mila. Does it mean two? Does he mean to say 2/4 of a mil, meaning 2/4, meaning 2 parts of and which means 2/4. The 2/4 would mean what? A half. Then you would say a half a mil. You wouldn't say 2 parts of it. You wouldn't say 2/4. You wouldn't say if I would say 2/4. I would say a half a dollar. How much is it? Half a dollar. 50. I would say it's 2.25. 2/4, right? Even though some people might talk that way, but it's a little more clear. You say 2 half a dollars. Ella the Gemara says now we're on 35a. Turn the page. Trade tilsi mil. It's 2/3 of a mil. That is that duration of Ben Hashmashot. So what's the difference between 2/3 and a half? The difference between 2/3 and a half is a 1/12. Is a 1/12. The Gemara says my benai. You can benai palga the danka. It's a 1/12 of a mil. And the Gemara says these 2 rabbis Rabbi Yosef and Rabbah that are arguing on the duration of Bein Hashmashot, the duration of this time period, of this twilight. And one takes an opinion that it's longer, and one takes the opinion that it's shorter. But when it comes to the chalta is a basket. It's the reverse. That the rabbi who said the smaller size said a larger size, and the rabbi that said a larger size over there says a smaller size by that law. The Amar Rabbah, what was the discussion about the basket? The discussion about the basket is on Shabbat. There are certain things that are mukseh on Shabbat. There are certain things that we can't handle on Shabbat. Now, even though something is very large, right? Technically a dresser or something, you could technically, you want to move it a little bit on Shabbat. I mean, Shabbat is not a day that you should be, moving your furniture, getting ready to move out of the house. But if you want to move the dresser, you can move a dresser on Shabbat, right? I have something fell behind the dresser, so I moved the dresser, right? But here we have different opinions that say that if something is so large that you wouldn't be able to move it. It would be considered a problem to move on Shabbat. So let's see what this argument. What's it again? What do you mean by inside? I mean, let's say. Right, indoor. Right. Very good, Mark. We're not talking about on Shabbat moving things outside. That will be getting to the issue of hotzah, of carrying on Shabbat. Rather we're talking about mukseh, moving things that are indoors. It's not a question of it's not a question of carrying on Shabbat. It's a question of moving things on Shabbat. And that here, as you know, like we said, I can't just go ahead and move my, I have my drill. I left out my drill, and now I want to move my drill. The sun is shining on my drill, my backyard. I don't want the sun to affect my drill. I can't move my drill, right? My drill is upset. There are certain things I could move my drill, right? Sometimes if a guy left something on the table, and it's a utensil, let's say a drill. So technically, if I need the place, I need to eat there. There is allowance if you need the place, to actually move certain items that are mukseh. I can't move money. If I left money on the table, I can't move money. Money's a higher level of mukseh, but I need the place. But there is a way to move something when you can't move it. How do you like that? Is when you move it not in a normal fashion, right? If you knock, right? Because because what will be the logic for that? That's what you're asking? Right. So the rabbis forbade us to move things on Shabbat, certain things on Shabbat. I can't handle certain things on Shabbat. And the reasoning behind that is one reason is the rabbis don't want the Shabbat to be like a regular weekday. Then I'm just involved and busy handling everything. And imagine, a lot of people who have their homes Sunday. What's the day of Sunday? They spend in the garage. They're moving things around, they're organizing their utensils, all different things. So if I'm going to if I would be able to handle everything on Shabbat, Shabbat will be like a weekday. I'll be busy, caught up, and doing busy. But now that you limit what I can handle on Shabbat, now you're opening up my time, my opportunity, and to make this day more of a day of rest. So therefore, if the fact that I'm not moving in a normal way, so therefore it's not a concern. This is what I would suggest to answer your question. So I'm not getting busy when I'm doing things like this, and it's not something that I'm going to get busy and caught up with. When I move things around, then okay, now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing that. I'm moving this around, I'm moving that around. I'm handling it. How far can I take the item that I go like this to? I mean, I can't go too far with it. I can't be too heavily involved with it. So therefore, that is one. And the other reason, Mark, is that one reason is because of carrying. That the concern of there's an opinion that says, why can't you handle things on Shabbat? Because the concern is if you could handle everything, you'll come to carry things outside on Shabbat. Meaning places where there's no eruv. And therefore, if you move something not in the normal way, we're not so concerned you're going to carry it outside. If you can't carry something like this outside so well, right? But if you hold it, if you take the money in the normal way, you might come in. So that could be answers to your question. Well, that's not the movement that the rabbis forbade. You know, even technically, you could check this up. Touching muktzah, technically, to my knowledge, I'll double check that. The prohibition is to move muktzah. But if you technically there'll be a heavy muktzah item that if you'll touch it, it's not going to move. You know, technically, it's not. That's not what the rabbis forbade. That wouldn't be. That technically, if you would touch a car is muktzah. But today, all the sensors and all the things, who knows what lights go on and noises but technically, in the old days, you touch it. Not that you even sit on the car. You move. You touch the car. If it's not moving, it's not. It wouldn't be technically a problem of muktzah. But most things today, most things you touch, they don't make things like they used to, right? Morning, good to see you. So they don't make things the way they used to. So things are very lightweight today, and therefore you touch a lot of things. Things are very sensitive. We live in a very sensitive society today, and therefore things move. I mean, we should tomorrow. We're going to continue. Time flies when you're having fun. Before you know what tomorrow we'll continue more about Mukseh, and then we'll continue into Bein Hashmashot. And I hope now the Shabbat is very early. By learning these Gemaras, it should encourage us to try to get the Shabbat. We're traveling to be there early enough, not to get close to Bein Hashmashot, not to get close to this time period of sunset. And we also said there's an idea of adding to Shabbat. You should refrain from work. You shouldn't play it to the bottom line, whatever, to the goal line. You know what I mean? Don't get too close to Shabbat. Make sure a couple of minutes before sunset. Ideally, if you could do 18 minutes, but really, technically, the men don't have to stop at 18 minutes before sunset. Make sure you stop at a nice spot before sun. You're not too close. Have a great day, everybody. Great day. Take care, Ronnie. Take care, Asaf. Mark.